Here's a block of wood. We want you to take this block of wood and carve a duck's head. Okay? How many people can do that? All right. Now, if you had a pattern to work with, how many people could do it? All right. If you had a pattern that was accurate with a top view and a side view, how many people could do it? Better yet, absolutely. One of the great things about working with accurate patterns is the fact that you can lock in two definite views of what you want to carve. Makes the carving so much easier. For instance, in a duck head, if you have this view, and then you have this view, when you cut it out, you will have a three-dimensional piece. Then all you have to do is put it into round. And anytime you can arm yourself with a good pattern, that will make the carving so much easier. I brought along some stuff here tonight so that you can see when we get done. You can just go through and see the various steps that I've done. But with a good, accurate pattern, you can make the carving process so much easier. And nowadays, there is a wealth of good patterns out there. So the key here is, how do you tell what is a good pattern? Okay, let's see at hand how many people are interested in decoys. Good, I like that too. Because that's my main interest. Well, there's a lot of pattern books that are available for decoy carvers. And here's the pattern book that we used to have when I first got started. This is by Paul Chappell and Clark Sullivan. And if we take a square and put it on this pattern book to see if the top view and the side view match up, we will see that this matches up just fine right here from the bill on both views is perfect. Okay? You come over here and now there's the eyes. They don't match up. All of a sudden you say there's something wrong here. The breast section doesn't quite match up. The tail section is pretty good. Here's the primary feathers here. That doesn't even come close. That's going to tell you right away there's something wrong with this pattern. So you're going to be cutting things out with your bandsaw at a right angle with a square block of wood. So you want to make sure that the pattern you have is highly accurate from one view to the other. And I'm going to show you how to do that yet tonight. Now let's grab another pattern book. This is one that Pat Godden has out. And we can literally take just about any one of these patterns. Here's a hen wood duck. You can see I do have some things drawn on this because I've demonstrated it quite a few times. But we put a T-square on this one. You can see the end of the bill matches up, the eye matches up, the back of the head matches up. We go over here to the side pocket. That line matches up. Where the tail starts, comes out of the body, matches up, and the primaries match up. This is a highly accurate pattern, which means if you start with a square block of wood and put that in there, when you cut that out, you're going to come out with a blank that is very accurate. Makes the carving process so much easier that way. Let's take a pattern and let's take a pencil here. This is a block of cork. Could be wood. It is wood. Cork is wood. It's just bark. That's all it is. Okay? And what we want to do is we want to put our pattern on. I'm going to start with a square, with a carpenter square or a T-square, whatever, and draw a squared off line down there, match up this line over the edge. That is where the breast section of my pattern is going to go. Put that pattern right on there. We can hold it up so that you can see it, and then I'm going to draw around it. But we start with the breast of this body view right on that squared off line. We matched it up with the center line right down the center. Okay? Once we've done that, then we can match up the side view with the same squared off line down the side. And I'll hold that up so you can see it a little bit easier. Which means then we can go to our bandsaw. We can then come in here, set this block, cut it out with a bandsaw, simply come around the edge of this, follow your pattern, and this piece will fall off. Do the same thing on this side, that piece will fall off. You now have 3 pieces. What I do is I use a little hot glue gun, and I'll put a little tack here and a tack there and put this back together. I now have a square block of wood again. Now I can turn this sideways, and I can run it through and cut the side view out also. When you do, all these pieces fall away, and there's your highly accurate blank. This is locked in. This is locked in. What you have to carve is this. The other thing I've locked in is through my pattern is I know exactly where the side pockets are going to end. I know exactly where the tail is going to start. On the top view, I know exactly where the upper tail coverts end and the tail starts. The same thing in the bottom view because you've locked all these spots in with your bandsaw. The other advantage of a highly accurate pattern. Very easy to do. So at that point, then you can put your guidelines on and you can start the carving process. I have it in different stages here so that you can see. First we started to put it into round. Then we located where the side pockets were. We cut those in at a right angle. Then we rounded those out to our guidelines. Once we did that, you can see where we had the rounding process. And then to the finished decoy. So you can see it start to finish all the way through. Now we did exactly the same thing with the head. We have the top view, we have the side view. You take and cut out the top view first, come around with your bandsaw on both sides. We now have 3 pieces. Tack it together with a hot glue, turn it sideways, cut out the side view, throw all the pieces away, and you come out with your blank and you can start putting in your guidelines and cutting things in because you know where everything goes. It's pretty easy to use your pattern. It's highly accurate from that view to this view. All you have to do is do your rounding. Now it's an oversimplification, but it really does work. And if you want to arm yourself with the easiest possible thing, make sure that you get a highly accurate pattern to start with. All you beginning carvers, there's a wealth of information right here at the club through the veterans. They know about this process. They can show you how to do it. And it'll make the carving process so much easier than just taking a block of wood and saying, find the duck on the inside. Okay, does that prompt any questions that I can answer at this point?
Willie,
Yes.
what are you carving with? What tools are you using?
Anything from hand tools to power tools. Chisel or to a chainsaw. It's all the same thing. You're doing the same thing. You're removing wood, cork, whatever the case may be. So it's a matter of how fast it takes you. I would make exactly the same cuts here, whether I'm using a knife or I'm using a grinder. Makes no difference. I'm still going to make those same right angle cuts. I'm going to still do the same rounding process. It's all a matter of whether you like to get it done fast, whether you like to take your time, whether you feel you're not traditional if you're not using a knife. I, for instance, when I'm out in my deer blind or my duck blind, will always have a knife and a few heads with me so that when there's no action, I can sit there and carve. Or at Christmas time, when it's time to carve Santa Clauses and teddy bears and that kind of stuff for the grandkids, I will have that stuff. You can walk in my deer blind anytime. And it's like, you know, walking in the bar with all the peanut shucks, well, mine's chips of wood. So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of how much time it takes you or what your preferences are. There's nothing wrong with using power, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with using a knife or a combination of both, which I do. All depending on whether the princess is cracking the whip or not. And if she is, man, I got the power out, and there's sawdust flying in every direction. Of which I've got a full-size loon I've got to carve in the next week, so she will be cracking the whip. I guarantee it. Okay, now the same thing can be true of carving something other than ducks. I carve a lot of teddy bears. And I have a book that I dearly love. This is Kelly Stadelman, and it's Carving Teddy Bears. I got this book a long time ago. It has some pretty good patterns in. But same situation, one view doesn't necessarily match the other view. So you have to kind of check things out here a little bit. Let me grab a little storyboard for you. By the way, if you want something that really helps the carving process, you can get some of this poster board at Walmart, any place, art store, whatever. It's already cut at a right angle, so if you lay your patterns on at a right angle, it allows you to see how accurate these patterns are. Let me come right over here. So I put this on the board with a T-square, put the patterns up there. Now anything that's going to affect the outside view of this pattern, I wanted to make sure that it matched up. So I put the T-square on there and I just kind of went up through there, make sure that everything was matching up. One spot would be the top of the head. Okay, that's kind of cut off, so I'm going to have to make a little bit of adjustment there and make sure that that's even. This spot right here on the top of your nose, if we can call it that, I want to make sure that that matches up right straight across. It does. The neck area matches up. Down to the arms. Now it doesn't make any difference on the side view because you won't see that arm anyway until this one is cut out. So that one's okay. So in this case, everything matches up except I need to match this head up. Okay? If I bring this up to where it probably should go, then I'm going to put my square on here. Turn that around, pop that on, and that's where I have to be clear up there. Okay? At that point, I will just try and get a center line and round that over like that. At least now, when I cut this out, it's getting accurate. Now you could do the same thing virtually with your block of wood. Here's the same pattern, and I just glued it on. Okay? You can see I made the adjustment. This is a square block of wood to start with, so I can do everything at a right angle, just like I would normally. And here's the side view. Now, when I cut this out, I'm going to put this under my handsaw, come in and cut all the way around this group, this group. You don't have to cut in real tight, just so you can put this block back together. Same thing. Hot glue, hot glue. I now have a square block of wood. Turn it sideways and cut out the sides. And when you do that, there's our two pieces came off. We turn it sideways and cut out the side view. And we have a very accurate blank. Now you can go to your pattern and it's pretty easy. You know where the top is, the top of the nose, you know where the chin is, and you can measure that, put your center line down there, and just lock in the various areas of anatomy. Makes it so much easier because this view is accurate, this view is accurate. I did it with a bandsaw. So again, what do you have to do? Basically rounding and then put some detail in. It's that easy. Yes, ma'am?
Why is it that these professional carvers are producing patterns that are unusable then?
They're not unusable.
Well, no, but they require us to augment them.
Right. Well, that's what we're trying to educate you. If you take and just do a little checking, you can see, number one, if the pattern is accurate. A lot of these guys will just freehand.
I wouldn't even buy the book if it wasn't.
Pardon me?
I wouldn't even bother to buy the book if it wasn't.
Right. Well, there's some good patterns. You'll look at some of this stuff and say, man, I really like that. Well, then when you check, you say, well, I've got to make this adjustment and this adjustment. Make the adjustment. If you like the pattern to start with, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, you have the ability to make that adjustment so that you can make it your own and things can be accurate from that view to that view.
To kind of further answer the question, most of the pattern books that we started with 25 years ago aren't around anymore because they weren't accurate. They were done from photographs or from carvings rather than actual bird studies. Pat Godden's pattern books are so highly accurate, it's the only one that we sell anymore.
Now, you can't find this book anymore.
Most of the old books like that were not accurate aren't around anymore because the carvers have gotten more sophisticated and they demand the accuracy. So you won't find them much anymore.
Now, let's ask Orlando a question. When you do fish, are you doing a 2-view cutout?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And it has to be accurate.
And it has to be accurate, absolutely. Otherwise, you got a fish that's a little weird, right? You got,
The one I use mostly is Ed Walikki. He's probably one of the nation's best fighters.
absolutely. And these are things that Ed would tell you. He would go through exactly the same thing I am tonight and tell you how to do it exactly the same way. So take advantage of it. If you have any questions, take advantage of the expertise you have here in your club. Give a call to someone. Give Orlando a call, or Kim, or someone, and say, look, I want to do this. I want to carve this. I want to carve a teddy bear or a mountain man or whatever. If you know of any good patterns, and they'll be happy to help you out. Now, another thing that you can do, and this is a lot of fun, you want to challenge yourself, is start with a photograph. Now, this requires some knowledge, and it can get a little bit hairy, but if you just kind of think the whole thing through, it makes it fairly easy. This is an overhead view of a duck that was in our aviary when we still had the store. This is a side view of the same duck, okay? You can notice that this one is bigger than this one. They don't match up. But I really liked that body view. I thought that was really great. It would make a nice pattern. And so I took that, cut it out, put it on a piece of paper, glued it on there, and got my basic pattern shape from it. Now what I have to do is I have to come up with a top view. Well, I took this top view and I thought, well, now I got to make these two match. So I ran up to the library and said, can I borrow your copying machine, which enlarges and reduces? And they said, certainly. So the first challenge I had was to do a little finagling around and get some different shapes and sizes and try and match things up, which I was able to do. I also armed myself with a whole lot of different pictures and measurements that I got off the internet of a greater Scott bluebill. Here's a top view of the head. I used that. Then I started matching up these views and blowing them up until I got to the right size. Here's actually the master ones that I did. Okay, when I wanted to get the life size, I knew that this was going to be 11.5 inches. I had to get this one to 11.5 inches. Well, when I got done blowing it up, it turned out this one was 12 inches. So I had to make some adjustments. You can see these lines in red where I made the adjustments. I brought this tail back just a tad to match up with this. I had to move this tail back. The upper rump I had to move back. The side pocket slightly to match up both of these views until I finally got exactly what I wanted. I went through exactly the same process with the head, except I didn't have a real good top view. Okay, where would I go to get measurements? For the top view of the head. Anybody. Study bill would be a good spot, would help you, because if you have a study bill, you know that's off of the live duck, okay? And if you take a measurement of the bill, then and blow it up to that exact measurement, then the head is going to be the right, going to match that bill, so you're going to have your head in the right size. Make sense? Okay? The other thing you could do is, we do know that Mr. Godden knows what he's talking about, and you can go to one of his pattern books and get the measurements off a life-size duck from there, which is what I did for this one, which I knew would get me close, okay? So, we're doing that, cutting things out exactly the same way. I knew exactly where my side pocket was, where the tail came out, where the side pocket was on the top. Same thing with the heads. Well, then I thought I would cut out a test head. Someplace here in my next, here's, I cut out a head. When I got done, I put the guidelines on it, and I looked at the bottom, and I thought, this came out a little bit short in here. So I made an adjustment to the pattern, just so I got a little more neck platform for more realism. And I added that to the pattern. At this point, I had it added to the top view also. When I cut it out, then I get a much more accurate view, okay? So at that point, that allows you then to get a very real looking greater scar. from a photograph.
Do they come painted like that, or do they?
That takes a little bit of work.
Took a minute.
So we'll have these out, and I truly don't mind if you handle it. Well, you might just belong to Diane. But you can handle these when you get a chance and you can see what they're up. These are cork bodies, by the way. These are actual working decoys that they hunt with. This is a bird that I did at the Ohio show a couple weeks ago, where we start in the morning and carve and paint duck, start to finish, and then enter the pool the following day. So that was a canvas back there, so you can take a look at that also.
You put detail on those too?
All depends on how much detail. Are you talking carving detail or painting detail?
Carving.
Carving, you're not allowed to do anything other than a smooth bird. They allow you to do a slight mandible separation on the bill, but that's it. You're not supposed to put any more, because we're dealing with this process and getting accurate guidelines on it. So that when it does come time to carve, you know I'm going to carve from here to here. I'm going to make a right angle cut. I'm going to take that out. It's done. It's locked in. You know where the side pocket is that fast. Because here was your guideline. You made a right angle cut. We now transferred that guideline down, and this went in with a right angle. Now it's just a matter of rounding it out and rounding it up. And when we do that, there's the cut. And then when we round it out, that's what you get, that nice soft transition. And nice soft transition in your side pockets. It's that simple. So arm yourself with good pattern to start with. Do the boring thing, work it out on paper, whatever. Develop your own patterns. Try it from a photograph. You know, Christmas cards. There's a lot of Santa Clauses on Christmas cards. I went on the internet this year. I wanted to do penguins for my two granddaughters. And so I went on the internet and I kept telling Diane, what was that cartoon character with the penguin? Anybody remember who it was? Chilly Willy, right on. And I went to Google and I typed in Chilly Willy. Well, needless to say, I got 10,000 websites with Chilly Willy pictures. And so I went through there and just started clicking and pasting and saving all these pictures until I finally found one I thought would make a really good pattern. And then I had to go searching for another one that would at least show me a side view of Chilly Willy to help me get close. And I went through this method, folks, this one right here. I went through that method with my Chilly Willy. I had this view, I finally got this one. Well, then I had to do some moving back and forth until I finally evened things up, made it easy to cut them out, which we did. You can see some pictures too. I'll put this up so you can see the grandkids with some of their stuff. This was last year. And my granddaughter is in color guard in the Otsego band. And so every year at Christmas time, I carve one of those teddy bears, but I put the uniform on that they have in their color guard for that year. And one of the flags that they always have. And so that's been kind of a neat tradition. She's got one more year for getting color guard teddy bears, and then she's back to old Santa Clauses again or something like that. But then I got other grandkids coming up there. I mean, we literally just sell hundreds of sheets of decoy fur.
What size is that coming in for?
Various thicknesses. The most popular thickness is 4-inch, which this is cut out of. 4-inch and 24 by 36-inch sheets.
That's the biggest, 36?
Right, that's a lot. The biggest sheets that we sell. Thicknesses wise, we start with 3-inch, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, and then we go to 7.5 inch. That's a big sheet of wood. But it is great stuff to work with.
Where does it come from?
It comes from Portugal. The #1 producer for decoy cords is Portugal. It comes from the cork oak tree. It's a renewable resource in that when they harvest the cork, they actually peel the bark off the tree. And that's where they grind it up and mix it with resins and so on and come up with cork boards and all kinds of stuff. But when they peel that off, they leave a strip of bark from the bottom of the tree right up the side of the trunk about yay wide. In 7 to 10 years, it grows back around. And so once they harvest that plantation, it sits dormant for 7 to 10 years before they go into harvest again. which point they just keep going all to these different open forests to do their harvesting. And the importer that we use is the #1 producer of decoy cork in the world. It's a billion dollar business. And guess what their #1 product is? Cork, wine stoppers. More wine stoppers than decoy cork, believe me. It's fine for power carving. As far as detail work and carving feathers in and so on, no, you don't want to do it. It's just not going to hold up well. You can get away with some detail, for instance, outlining a particular feather group, but individual feathers within that group you wouldn't want to try. It's just not going to hold up well.
And wood burn it?
Is more a breast rester where we have the bill is resting on the breast like that, or sleeping like that. Then I've carved them, the heads out of cork, and it works real great. But if you get a cork bill out there, you've got to get a lot of reinforcement or you could break it off. Especially under normal hunting conditions. The way my son throws decoys around, you want a lot of reinforcements. Any other questions?
How do you attach the head to the body? Just glue or?
I do a combination of two things. First of all, I'll drill a pilot hole. Once it's in this shape right here, I'll drill a pilot hole right straight down. Bang, okay? So now I know where that pilot hole is on the bottom. Then, you can use whatever glue turns you on. I personally use hot glue. A lot of carvers just freak out over that. But hot glue really does hold up. I mean, I've challenged guys, I put hot glue and glue the head on and say, break the head off. And they struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle. And finally, you know, they just reef on it. Well, it isn't the glue joint that breaks, it's the cork. A big chunk comes out. You got the head with a great big chunk of cork in the bottom where it broke up. So the cork broke before the glue joint did. But anyway, once I have that pilot hole in, and I glue the head on, I know exactly where I want it to go. Okay? Now the head is glued on. Now, once it's glued on, then I can take a long deck screw and run it up through that pilot hole right up into the head. And that holds it in place. If you really want to cinch it down, you could even put a fender washer on it and zip it in like that. But I usually run the screw clear up into the cork and then I fill that hole right up and it's gone. So, I've had occasions in classes where we do that, especially with basswood, where I'd run a screw up in there and the students would freak out because the head would split in half. Put a little too much pressure in there to get it up too far. So more than once I've had to carve a new head for a student. Make sure they went home with something decent. Any other questions?
There's one other question. I noticed some of the cuttings that you're doing with bandsaw are quite sharp edges. I'm wondering how you do sand out and some of the other direction.
Right. I cut with a fairly small blade. I think it's a 3/16 that I use. Up to a 1/4 inch. Anything from there. I don't like an 1/8 inch blade. It's a little bit thin for me. But a lot of times, I just want to build 1/16 per inch. I can go into a spot, back out slightly, and then can go and make my cut. With that smaller blade, you can make those corners a lot of times. Even with a 1/4 inch blade, you can make them if you just take your time. Any other questions? Well, good. We can go home now.